Simply better than the one I have. That's the main answer to my title. It seems that with all the outrage, it's hard to believe that people want the Pro. The truth is that most people want a PS5 Pro but cannot carelessly afford it on day one, myself included. We like to keep it real on this side of the internet, so just subscribe if you're digging the content. Going back to what I was talking about, if you can't get it or don't want it, that doesn't mean to discredit its value and shout it out from the rooftop. Both of the following statements are true for me. PS5 Pro will be the best console to play multiplat, PS5, and Xbox games. And also the holy grail being GTA 6. And I'm not getting it on day one. Most likely at some point, right? And I believe, to be honest, many more people will follow suit. Many more people will get the PS5 Pro at some point, especially when that holy grail hit. I can just picture the PS5 ad saying Halo will play better on PS5 Pro. You know, if you've been following Sony, they have the pettiness to do it. And please note, this is coming from someone whose ecosystem is on Xbox. Don't worry, I'm a recovered fanboy who follows the drama, but I have all consoles. Also, these people have no loyalty to me. I will admit that Sony's PS5 Pro reveal made it easy to hate, especially for people who already hated it. It gave me the infamous 2006 press conference energy, you know, giant enemy crab. I wish there were newer games to showcase the Pro in the best light possible instead of the racetrack of Ratchet and Clank. Also, there were rumors that the presentation itself would be focusing on Concord, and we know how that went. Despite the poor presentation, it's worth waiting and seeing and researching. Speaking of researching, I did a little bit of research for you guys who are likely on the fence. Luckily, some of the good people at Digital Foundry did a hands-on preview and, you know, played it, have thoughts about it, and I just wanted to do a reaction video. Here we go.
Let's try and round everything up here because you've now had a good sampling of Pro upgrades, like for like against, say, a PlayStation 5 digital. I guess that's the closest comparison point. Is it worth the extra money? Now, from my perspective, from what I've seen so far, particularly when you're looking at the areas where the developers have clearly gone the extra mile, I mean, that Formula One stuff really looked fantastic. It was like on your PC, buying a new graphics card, being able to access features you couldn't access before, and just generally getting an uplift everywhere else. Would you concur? What's your...
The graphics card argument is a good point because it's hard to find it. And, you know, it was hard to find it. It can be overpriced. And I think the $700 PS Pro is a viable solution.
Thought on all of this?
I'd agree with that. But I think, especially with these console games, it does depend on how you like to play these games. Because I think if you like playing games at higher frame rates, it's much more worth it, especially if you like playing games in their 60 FPS performance modes that are more demanding, like where we see 1440p resolutions facilitated by FSR 2 or 3 and image quality isn't quite there, but just that class of sort of really advanced game that might also, like you mentioned, have ray tracing in there, might be more intensive and might struggle a lot on base PS5. Getting those games to a 4K output with a reasonably stable image can make a huge difference. It can make a really, really big difference. It's just tough because this generation...
Don't downplay that point. Frame rate is a big stinking deal, especially if you can get it with the right texture, the right 4K. I have something in the end where, you know, we talk about TV matters and all that stuff, but I definitely have views on that. But frame rate, freaking awesome, super awesome graphics, put it together. Normally you can't do that on the PS5. You could do it on a Pro. I don't know about you. That sounds cool to me.
Seen developers push out visual features. And in a world without upsampling, we'd probably be looking at like a lot of games at 1080p at 900p, pushing out more advanced visual features. Certainly that was the initial target for Unreal Engine 5 in terms of that delivering like a 1080p-like image on the consoles. And then, of course, you have the upsampling in there that's improved that presentation. But I think that's probably the number one area. If you're a gamer who likes to play at 60 FPS, likes to play those more demanding games. That's really where I see the benefit being mostly, in at least existing titles, right? What we have right now. There's also, like you said, the possibility that with games that do have ray tracing on PC or do have toggles for more ray tracing or enhanced higher fidelity versions of existing ray traced effects, you could get an improvement here. Like you would expect those ray tracing features to show up here, whereas you probably wouldn't on base PS5 or Series.
I'm not gonna lie, trying to see the difference. I think I could see the hue being a little bit darker. Wait, let me see here.
Series X or Series S in games like GT7 and F124 in particular, you're seeing the PS5 Pro legitimately deliver a much stronger visual experience because it can handle a lot more ray tracing in real time, even at 60 FPS possibly, like we see in those games, but only really if the CPU time is there. That's kind of the trade-off there, right? You might be going down to 30 FPS. But I would say that on the flip side, we've discussed like where the PS5 Pro shines. If you are playing games at 30 FPS, I think image quality on the base consoles, especially at a normal viewing distance sitting from a 4K television, it's pretty much just about there. It's basically fine. And I think in that case, you're going to see a lot of games where PS5 Pro, even if it does have a 30 FPS mode, it's not really delivering a whole lot more to you unless you do have some of those ray tracing features on top of that. And also, if you're happy with image quality on consoles at 1440p delivered to you in those 60 FPS modes, I think it's also possibly a worthwhile thing to stick with your base PS5 if you aren't experiencing some of those issues. But I do ultimately think that if you value that fidelity and you do fall into one of those two camps, you do want to see more ray tracing, you do like those performance modes, I think the Pro is a really good investment. There is a conversation to be had a little bit here between the value of a Pro and a PC, but I think for a hassle-free gaming experience, delivering high fidelity visuals with no particular issues with updates, no particular issues with incompatibility, a very stable and smooth operating system, I don't think you're going to get that out of PC for at least.
So 2 words here, hassle-free. I think that's pretty important to a lot of the people. I think majority of people who want the PS5 Pro or that target demographic, like we're talking no issues, hassle-free. I got the graphics, I got the frame rate, that's the word I'm looking for. I don't need a PC, Windows updates.
It's another few years here. I think when you look at the PS5 Pro, that's delivering a really good experience. And it's also fairly favorable in terms of that cost relative to a PC. But I also do see it, like you said, as a kind of PC-like upgrade where you're getting more of those features, you're adding on more of those ray tracing, you're adding on more of that ray tracing rather, you're getting kind of that upgrade from that like 3060 Ti to like that 4070 class of GPU or something in that vicinity, 6000 class of GPU, where you are able to push things up a little bit. Now, in some games, that's going to be a more compelling upgrade than in some other games, but the addition of PSSR in particular, I think gives you a lot more to play with potentially on the PS5 Pro and gives you a more significant upgrade than you would expect from the raw specs alone, potentially. That 45% boost in kind of raster performance, so that 67% boost in CU count.
Yeah, the PSSR argument, I don't know if I'm feeling that a lot. I wish there was a more simplistic way to explain that. Like, I know it's something that maybe the developers see that we can't see, but I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit out of that scope. I just know it looks better, it plays smoother, right? I'm still on the, I got my FPS, I got my graphics. That's on that alone, I'm sold.
I think it's underselling it. But yeah, I think ultimately the PS5 Pro is for those users. It eases some of that tension where the PS5 is often not quite there in terms of image quality relative to PC, often not quite there in terms of image quality, even relative to what we saw last generation with like PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, where we did often see higher native resolutions in titles than we're seeing now. But overall, I think the console is worth it for that kind of player. It's unfortunate that it comes in at such an increased cost relative to the PS5, whereas like PS4 Pro was coming in at the same price as the PS4 when it launched. Bit of a different era in terms of the progress in silicon process technologies and the complexity in those technologies. So that's changed a little bit, but I don't think that the underlying value proposition is that different. I think for those players who do want that enhanced experience, PS5 Pro.
So I think this is where some disagreement. I know the biggest detractors or, criticizers of the PS5 Pro is the price. I think that's always been PlayStation's issue. When it came to the PS3, $600, that was the biggest detriment. And then even now, facing this second wave of, heavy criticism, it's like the price again. So not a bad product at all, but just the price issue, That's the thing, man. I want it, but man, that price, just at the difference. I'm like, basically I have a computer, I have all the systems. I just can't justify it, man. Maybe when I get my bonus around Christmas.
Is going to provide that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really impressed with what you've seen so far. The thing that's missing to me is Unreal Engine 5 games that were running at really, really low resolutions, which were kind of abused, where FSR2 was abused to get us back to decent resolutions outputs and wasn't quite achieving the target. So I'm eagerly awaiting to see PS5 Pro updates for the likes of Star Wars Outlaws and Avatar and all of those games, and Immortals of Aveum, those type of experiences where the image quality at 60 wasn't holding up and where the experience often wasn't hitting 60. I think that's really where we're going to see some really interesting stuff based on what we've seen so far. And I also think we're going to continue to see variable levels of commitment to the Pro. If you think back to PS4 Pro, we lost count of the amount of times that a game would ship at 1080 on the base console and 1440 on the Pro. At least this time, even if it is kind of like a low effort Pro implementation, the tools are there to actually get better results with PSSR versus just, an increase in raw rendering resolution, which you probably couldn't do that much with anyway, bearing in mind that relatively the GPU size increase is lower compared to a PS4 Pro. So, I still say that there's a lot to come here. And I think there's a lot generally about the system we still don't know about. We still don't know what Ultra Boost mode does, for example, or Game Boost as it's officially being christened. How does it work? What does it actually do? We still don't know. Nobody at the event was seemingly committed to telling us. But
just on a side note, I really enjoy this video. It just seems like just honest feedback, criticism, in terms of not knowing a lot of these features that were being shown to them. Definitely want to be going on IGN to look at stuff like that, Something just, I don't know, it feels like journalism. Dying art.
But what can I say? I think this has been a really interesting exercise, and I'm really happy that your first press trip for Digital Foundry was actually something quite meaningful and, dare I say it, profound. It was a great experience by the sound of it.
Yeah, it was really good. I'd also say, I think the fact they do have machine learning hardware in there, it does present a lot of really interesting and tantalizing possibilities for the future. Now, I wasn't able to talk to anyone about the PS5 Pro hardware in depth there, but I think when you look at something like DLSS 3.5 ray reconstruction on PC, you get the sense that if Sony was putting in a lot of development time now, maybe in a few years, we'd see something similar. And indeed, when you do look at some of those more challenged titles, they are pushing out ray tracing. And I did have a couple conversations about how PS5 Pro with PSSR was improving the fidelity of their ray tracing output in certain titles, but it's not quite the same as getting all those inputs separate from the final color value of the scene and really kind of working with that like DLSS ray reconstruction does. So there's a lot of potential here with PSSR, a lot of potential possibly with other technologies, a lot of potential in general as developers just get to grips with the hardware and do more interesting things with it. And I think I'm really excited to see what the future holds. But this early showing, quite compelling across a lot of...
This is the game that will make people jump over. Plan on playing it, but definitely get the PS5 Pro for this. Yeah, boy.
Games, definitely delivering that huge uptick in visual quality in titles like The Crew or like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. A gigantic increase in visual quality while also hitting 60 FPS. That I think is going to be really compelling for a lot of players. And then a lot of these more demanding titles, it is going to be just a really compelling experience, I would expect, based off of what I saw last week.
Interesting. Well, thanks for that. And, what could I say? I guess at this point, we need to go hands-on hopefully at base, and actually get to grips with the hardware and a few more games to see what's actually going on there, and to get more of a flavour for the non-curated lineup of titles. They're talking about like 40 or 50 games for launch, which is a lot. Kind of nuts. So we're going to be busy, aren't we? Ultimately.
Absolutely.
And of course, looking to see what Game Boost actually does and how that works. I was thinking about PS4 Pro, and it effectively, boost mode there gave you the extra clocks of the GPU, but not much else. Well, you got the CPU boost as well, obviously. But in the case of PS5 Pro, well, we don't think there is a clock boost. So you'd think it was using all of the 60 CUs to provide that extra performance, but we just won't know until we...
I'm telling you, man, stinking, best place to play PS5 Pro, real talk.
Go hands-on.
Yeah.
So lots of things still to learn about this hardware.
Yeah, guys, I hope it brought some clarity. Definitely brought some clarity for me. It makes me a little more excited. Who knows? I might get it on day one. What the heck? Dude, it's awesome. Don't crap on it, man. No reason to crap on this. What the heck? I will land with this excerpt from a CNET article written by Scott Stein, who had hands-on with the PS5 Pro and had this to say about it. The PS5 Pro is all about making big TV gaming a happier experience. A souped-up GPU promises more ray tracing and fluid 4K and 60 frames per second gaming across the board for games that get a Pro upgrade, and automatic AI upscaling for other games in the PlayStation library. Aside from being a gaming enthusiast, I'm also a TV tech enthusiast. For example, I have a Samsung S95C for my office, as well as an Alienware monitor for my PC, and in my living room, I have a bigger 65-inch Samsung S95B. As you can see, I am QD OLED up. What makes you think PS5 won't intrigue pixel junkies in addition to frame rate and graphic junkies? Long story short, I want a PS5 because it's better than my old PS5. I would also appreciate a like and subscribe because you just put up with me for 15 minutes. I'm just joking, but seriously. Thanks for watching.